The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 995, coming to you on Monday the 15th of February 2021. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic Political Tribalism and the Pandemic. But before getting into that topic, a few preliminary comments, beginning firstly and as usual with condolences to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And in particular, I have a list of families. I wouldn't have time to go into each deceased person individually, but beginning with Mr. Winston Churchill Richards, also known as Daddy Richards, who was laid to rest last night. My condolences to the family of Randy Dopwell, to the family of Miss Justina Pompey, and especially His Eminence the Archbishop Melford Pompey, and all the other members of the Pompey family. To the Parmenas Ballantyne family on the loss of their mother, and to the family of Miss Elsa Jones of Green Hill, one of my strong supporters in the days when I was parliamentary representative. And a number of other people have died whom I recognize, but I wouldn't want to extend the list. Now, I want to apologize for the number of recent programs missed. Some unavoidably. There was a program when the Prime Minister addressed the nation on a Monday night. We couldn't come on. Then there was a public holiday, the second holiday that he granted in January. And then there was the budget. And last week I had a bit of an inconvenience in that I had court hearings virtually Monday afternoon and couldn't come on. So I do apologize, and I missed you all very, very much. Excuse me. Next preliminary. I am sure many of us looked at the proceedings in the recent impeachment trial of former President Trump. And you would have found many things strange about that trial. Well, an impeachment under the United States Constitution is not a legal proceeding, it's not a legal trial. It's a political trial. You see, in legal trials, you stick strictly to the rules of evidence. You present your evidence, you present your arguments, and there is a verdict rendered according to the evidence. But in political trials, such as impeachments, it's a matter of strength, political strength. And we saw it manifested because from all along, the Republicans knew that unless 17 of them had voted to convict former President Trump, he would be acquitted. But the Democrats felt they had to go through the process, and lo and behold, President Trump was acquitted. But from the video footage of the insurrection which Mr. Trump organized and inspired, there can be no doubt that what Mr. Trump did was a serious dereliction of duty. Now, a few years ago, some of you might recall me asking a member of the viewing audience to assist me in locating a particular book, The Decline and the Fall of the Roman Empire by Roger Gibbon. You remember that? And after I had made that appeal on this program, two gentlemen contacted me and showed me where I could find that book. And the reason I wanted to reread that book, which I had read as a youngster in school, was that I saw many similarities between American society and the Roman society just before the Roman Empire declined. And throughout the tenure of Mr. Trump's presidency, in my view, the United States of America has deteriorated to such an extent that I regard the United States as in serious decline. And heaven help President Biden in arresting that decline. But what I see from the United States is not pleasant. But more about that. Now, I think I better get on to the program because I have a few other preliminary comments, but if I went into them, we would trespass on the time for the rest of the program. And I really want to get into the topic, political tribalism and the pandemic. I want to make one fundamental point at the outset. And it is this. In my humble opinion, and I'm giving an opinion, it's not a fact, but in my humble opinion, the political system we have is not suited for these times of crisis. I will tell you what I mean. There is no doubt that the world is in crisis. There is no country on earth that has not been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We in the Caribbean can juggle numbers, and from time to time we can say, oh, this country has shown more positive cases than the other country and so on, but we all are suffering from the effects of the virus. Our lives have been materially changed, perhaps for good. You walk around now and you can't recognize anyone unless you know them very, very thoroughly because everyone is wearing a mask. And yesterday, I had an experience where a lady with her mask greeted me and my wife as we sat at the Buchanan Clinic waiting for our vaccine, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And the lady greeted me and was chatting, and not for the life of me did I realize to whom I was speaking. It's when she was gone that my wife told me, you know, that was so-and-so. I said, Lord, I didn't recognize her because I was in mass, she was in mass, but she recognized me, obviously, but I did not recognize. You can't recognize people. That is the first thing. So we have all become strangers to one another. Then our freedom of movement has been severely curtailed. According to the protocols announced by the Ministry of Health, there are certain things we are not permitted to do. We are not permitted to congregate in large numbers. We are to keep our social distancing of 6 feet from each other. Life has become weird, let us face it. We are told we must stay at home as much as possible. Our children are out of school. Now the strains that has imposed on the society are almost incalculable. Life is not normal in any sense of the word. Right now, today, Monday the 15th of February, today is supposed to be Carnival Monday in Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago. But their carnivals have been cancelled by the governments of Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago. No carnival. In fact, the Dominica government announced some measures aimed to stamp out any sort of gathering, any sort of festivities at all. I listened to the Chief of Police of Dominica. They're not called Commissioner as in St. Vincent. The head of the police force in Dominica is still called Chief of Police. I listened to him at a press conference yesterday on a program which has become one of my favorites, Anu Pale. And very often the Prime Minister of Dominica comes on the program. And the Commissioner of Police was spelling out the new regulations which go into effect from tomorrow. He said among the penalties, any violation of the regulations will attract a fine of up to $10,000 EC and imprisonment of up to 12 months. And a further levy of $5,000 for each day in which the crime continues or the disobedience to the order. These are serious matters. But as much as Trinidadians, for example, love their carnival, it's something that, if you had told a Trinidadian 2 years ago that the time will come when there will be no carnival, he would tell you you're crazy, you need to go to the mental home. But no carnival in Trinidad. Tomorrow should have been Mardi Gras in Trinidad. And the government, I listen to Prime Minister Keith Rowley very frequently when he gives his press conferences, and he has made it clear. He said a few days ago, Carnival and COVID don't mix. So that we in the Caribbean have to adapt our lifestyles to suit the new reality, because this virus is a serious occurrence. We have mutations where the virus is changing up itself, and different strains have appeared in different countries. Fortunately, man's ingenuity has come to the fore, and vaccines have now been developed, tested and approved by the international bodies for use among populations. Last week, the government of India sent a shipment of vaccines to Barbados for onward distribution to Dominica. Prime Minister of Dominica said that Dominica received, I think it was 90,000 doses of the vaccine. And he said out of the goodness of his heart, he has decided to share those vaccines with other states in the OECS. And that is why our Prime Minister could have announced last week that we had received 5,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine from Dominica. They came from India. And I have to thank the government of India and the government of Dominica, and indeed the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines, for arranging that. From the time I heard of vaccines being developed, I started doing some reading. I organized to get the names of myself and my family on the list, because in any event, I am in the high-risk category of persons in that I'm over 70. I'm now 75, as you all should know. And I have several underlying conditions: heart, sugar, pressure, kidney, you name it. And at the start of the pandemic last year, my daughter, Rusha, who is a medical doctor, had warned me about staying away from situations where I could possibly be exposed to infection. And I've been doing that religiously. And therefore, it was a relief when on Saturday I was notified by telephone that arrangement had been made for me and my wife to go to the Bookman Clinic on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock to get our vaccine, which we duly did. And I want to thank the doctors and nurses at the Bookman Clinic for being so gracious. Everything was handled so smoothly. Mrs. Campbell and I went and we got our vaccine, and up to now, thank the Lord, knock wood, I am not feeling any ill effects at all. Not even the slightest tingle where I got the needle. Now, I know that there are many people who are skeptical about taking the vaccine. I know that. And this is not something new. Years ago, there was a group of persons in St. Vincent and Grenadines, young intellectual persons, who were preaching an anti-vaccine propaganda. They had read things about the ill effects of vaccination long before COVID, I'm not talking about last year. Years ago. And persons from that same group are now surfacing and posting all sorts of things on social media aimed at discouraging persons from taking the vaccine. Well, as I said before, I did some reading and satisfied myself that there was nothing to be afraid of. But not only that, I consulted all the doctors with whom I deal, beginning with Arusha. And the medical advice I got was that I should take the vaccine. So I want to thank my doctors. They have kept me alive since I did my heart surgery 7 years and 1 month ago. And if my doctors strongly advised me to take the vaccine, I would follow that advice, and I have followed that advice. So Mrs. Campbell and I got our first shot yesterday, and we have to go back in a few weeks' time. They gave us a date on a card for the second shot. Now, there may be good reason for some persons not to want to take a vaccine at this time. For one thing, those who are pregnant or may become pregnant may have special sensibilities, because apparently the vaccines have not been tested to any great extent on pregnant women. So I could understand if somebody who is pregnant or planning to be pregnant says, look, I am worried, I'm not taking it for now. I can understand that. And there may be other situations, but my advice to anybody who is thinking about taking or not taking the vaccine, check your doctor. Don't rely on what you read on social media. Don't rely on what you yourself have read. Check a doctor you trust. All right? Okay, excuse me. Now, I come to the crux of this presentation. I said before, we are in a state of crisis. We're not under a state of emergency in the constitutional sense, but we are surely in a state of social emergency. Things are not normal. But does our political system allow us to make decisions in a democratic manner to cope with the situation? And I don't think our political system is capable of doing that. For one thing, in a time of social crisis, decision making should be voluntarily shared by the government with the official opposition. This is no time for the government to say, okay, we make our decisions and you hear it on the opposition, hear it on the radio, and what they want to think or say or do, that is up to them. No. So even now, even though we don't have any constitutional mechanisms for cooperation, because our system is built on competition and rivalry, I would appeal to the government, particularly the Prime Minister, to reach out to the opposition and bring them in on the major decisions that the government is planning to make. Nothing is wrong with that. Unfortunately, when I listened to the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition carrying on at the last sitting of the budget, I was embarrassed. And I'm sure the Speaker was uncomfortable to hear these two grown men, our national political leaders, go at one another like that. It was, I'm sorry to have to say, it was disgraceful. But it shows that in our political system based on tribalism, when the tribes are at war, as they always are, it is difficult to get them to make common decisions. So what you get is a government announces one thing, and the opposition criticizes it, whether they have all the facts, yes or no, because they feel that their role is to criticize the government, to keep the government on its toes. That is okay for normal times, but these times are not normal. So that our leaders have to find some mechanism to cooperate. There are institutions in the society which could help them to do that. You already have the St. Vincent Grenadines Christian Coalition. They have played a magnificent role in recent weeks and months, particularly when they organized the 24-hour prayer period, so that perhaps the government could form a national body consisting of government representatives, opposition representatives, Christian coalition representatives, and other persons to make critical decisions as we go forward dealing with the COVID crisis. A few days ago, I listened to a press conference given by the St. Lucia Prime Minister, and I was amazed. He had on the panel himself as Prime Minister, his Minister of Health, his Minister of National Security, the leader of the opposition, and then the heads of all important civic organizations in St. Lucia. One by one, coming up on the radio and giving their bit. Head of the Manufacturers Association, head of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, head of the Teachers Union. And I said, that is the way to go, my brother. Now, you could see St. Vincent and Grenadines having a governmental press conference, inviting the leader of the opposition to speak freely. It is not easily imaginable, but it is something to which our national leaders must aspire. So I'm calling on my good friend and brother, Dr. Gonsalves, to put aside the political hostility, the tribalism, and embrace the opposition in the national planning concerning this COVID. I understand from the news that the government is having a meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, with the minibus operators, because the minibus operators have been very hard hit. They're told you can only have half the number of licensed passengers in your van. Well, they're naturally saying, well, we need some compensation, and they are correct. You can't expect a person running a business consisting of having a passenger van on the road, and all of a sudden he is forced to only have half the number of fare-paying passengers in that van. When the month comes, he has to face the bank or credit union to pay back the installment on the loan he took out to buy that van. So that the van drivers do have a case, and other segments of the society who are disadvantaged by the new regulation, the new regime, ought to be looked at. I know the government, thankfully, and we heard the details in the budget, they have reached out and given millions of dollars to various segments of individuals in the course of 2020. Well, this is something which has to be continued in 2021 because the virus is still with us, and from all indications, it is going to be with us for quite some time until the populations of the world have been sufficiently vaccinated. But the problems are there. So I sum up by saying, and by pleading with my brethren in the political sphere, government and opposition, this is no time for business as usual. This is no time for hostilities to continue. This is time for government and opposition to cooperate in the national interest in this time of pandemic that we are facing. A word to the wise, they say, ought to be sufficient. So let me hope that these words would not fall on deaf ears, and let me hope that our political actors on the national stage would find the necessary spirit of cooperation to do the best government and opposition can do collectively for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent, land so beautiful, with joyful hearts. Yeah. All right, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is all from this program of The Law and You. I hope I'll be of further service to you next week, Monday, TV, for another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week. ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel R. Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.